Riley is my best friend. She is shy and is very kind and is always positive. She is sensitive about other people's feelings and wants to be friends with everyone. She always has my back and does not like to talk about other people behind their back. One day, I was in my bedroom making my bed and waiting for my friend Riley, who was spending the weekend with me, and I was so excited to see her. Knock, knock, knock. I ran downstairs to answer the door, and when I opened it, Riley was standing there, and I said, "Come on in." She smiled and walked in. The warmth of the house was welcoming, and the smell of the breeze was ever so refreshing. The soft carpet was... As we went into my room, Riley said to me, "Did you see Bailey picking her nose today in class? It was so gross, she ate it too. Isn't she disgusting?" When I told Riley that she should not talk about people behind their back, she explained that she would never know. But when I said no, she went home. The next day at school, she had told everyone that I was being a bully, and everyone believed her. Then people started glaring at me and not talking to me. When I got home, I started to cry and made up my mind to run away. When I had gotten everything I could carry, I snuck out of the house and set off somewhere new. Soon I came to a dark forest that was covered in all sorts of mosses, spiderwebs, and mud. I was a bit startled at the scene of the forest and almost turned back, but something, or perhaps someone, was keeping me going. The forest was dark and damp, and soon I came to a small stream, and it was that I drank from. The water was cold and soothing to my dry mouth, but the dirt in it was not. I felt like I should cry because I was all alone. I looked down and saw the moss beneath my feet and took off my shoes and felt the moss beneath my feet. And the rocks hidden in the moss made my feet rough. As the sun went down, the breeze got cooler, so I put on my other jacket and made myself a little shelter from the wind. Then I saw a big flat board, and I put it inside and put my sleeping bag on it and slept. The next morning, I was starving, so I put more wood on my fire and set a trap for a rabbit or a bird and went back to get my things ready. I had brought a pocket knife, some seasonings like salt and pepper, things I could make fire with, a pot, a pan, and some food of my own so I wouldn't starve if I didn't get anything. As I walked up to my trap, there was a screaming rabbit that would pierce anyone's ears if they heard it. I quickly slaughtered it and put it out of its misery. After that, I skinned it and took it to a stream and washed it. Then I made a spit to put it on and cooked it over the coals. While I cooked it, I took off my shoes and felt the cool, damp dirt beneath my feet. The breeze was cool, and the leftover water droplets from the rain on the trees were dripping over my head and almost felt like it was cooling my thoughts. For I knew I was lost and had lost everything. The day went by slowly, but without stopping, I strived to make my shelter better to protect me from the rain. After 3 days of rain, the dull color of the forest was lush green, and all the water on the ground was a soothing drink to my dry throat. As I walked along, I spotted a wild raspberry bush and picked them till it was gone. After that, I took some of the berries and heated them over the fire and ate a few of them. I've watched too many Man vs. Wild and know about keeping things cool and fresh. So I had a plastic Ziploc bag and put the berries in it and took it to the stream that was much bigger from the rain and put them under the water and held it down with rocks to keep it down. The next morning, I could see some deer walking around my little place and could not find anything to take it with, so I just watched. The rain fell softly and the sun was just coming out from the clouds, and the sun warmed me. I figured out how to keep my fire going when I didn't need it. I burned my fire till there were just coals and found a bunch of dry moss and covered my fire with it, and that kept it going for quite a few hours until I needed it again. I would get about 3 rabbit a week, and there were about 20 more berry bushes. Then I came to an old abandoned cabin that was surprisingly worse than my shelter, but I explored, and inside was a few things like a rocking chair, matches, and some food. I looked inside the cupboards and saw some things like salt, pepper, sugar, and many other seasonings. When I was done looking, I made a pie stuffed crust and made a small pie in my bag and headed back, and the sweet taste was nice. Then I made a shelf out of wood and some nails that I had found on my way back. And it was getting dark, so I ate some rabbit and fell fast asleep. When I woke the next morning, I went down to the river and filled a small bin with water that I'd found the day before and heated the water over the fire. Then I washed my clothes that I'd brought because they were covered in mud. When I was finished, I ate some rabbit and thought about everything, like why I was out here and how I got here. But everything was clear to me. I took off my shoes and started to walk around. I felt everything beneath my feet. Walking barefoot. I'd been walking barefoot a lot lately, and it was a soothing feeling. As time passed, I could see the sun setting over the horizon, and was warmed by the fire. That night, I could not fall asleep because I couldn't stop thinking about how worried my parents must be and if they were looking for me, but I didn't want to sleep anyways, so it was okay. The morning was bright and warm, and all the birds were singing their songs and were beautiful, and the sound of the water trickling down the trees was relaxing. It was more than just beautiful. It was the best day I'd had since I'd been out here. The sun was shining and everything was in action. I climbed a tree and I could see everything, and it was beautiful. That night, as I fell asleep, I felt something burn on my feet. So I sat up by the fire to see, and I was terrified at what I saw. My feet had become infected. They were bleeding and were too weak to walk on. I started to cry because I couldn't get help. When the sun was coming up over the horizon, I saw my feet starting turning brownish, and I knew the next stage was gangrene, and that was when they would have to be amputated. As time passed, I started imagining voices, and soon I knew I wasn't imagining anymore. The people took me to the hospital, and my parents rushed to my side. After the doctor examined my feet, he said, "We got you here just in time. If you would have gotten here tomorrow, you would have had an amputation. You are very lucky." For the next 5 weeks, I had to be in a wheelchair and a huge wrapping around my feet. But after a week, I went back to school. Although I didn't want to, I still did. When I walked through the classroom doors, everyone was staring at me. I was pretty nervous, but then I was surrounded by "good to see you," or how is it like living by yourself for a month? But then Riley came up to me, and I could see the tears in her eyes, and I was holding some back as well. "I'm so sorry," she cried. "It's okay," I said. "Look at your feet, and it's all my fault," Riley exclaimed. After I told her it was okay, she took a sigh of relief and said we were going to be friends forever, and that she would never be mean again.